Good morning and welcome to the March 2013 edition of Volunteer Match Solutions Best Practice Network webinar series, A Billion Plus Change, What's Behind the Movement to Inspire More Pro Bono in America. My name is Lauren Wagner and I'm going to be helping to facilitate today's session. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. We're going to have time at the end of today's session for some Q&A. So there are two different ways that you can submit questions for our speakers during the presentation. The first is by typing the questions into the chat box on the right side of your screen. And the second way is via Twitter to VM_solutions using the hashtag VMBPN. And we'll try to get to as many of the questions at the end of the presentation as we can. Also, a copy of the slides and the recorded webinar are going to be circulated to everybody after the live event, so you will have those resources afterwards. So we're really excited this morning to be hearing from two great friends of VolunteerMatch. The first is Jenny Lawson. Jenny is the Executive Director of A Billion Plus Change, and she's going to be diving into the history of the Billion Plus Change movement and why over 300 of the nation's most well-known brands, including VolunteerMatch, have taken the pledge to make skilled and pro bono service part of their community involvement programs, as well as how your company can get involved in the movement and take the pledge today. We'll then be hearing from Aaron Dietrich, and Aaron is actually joining us live in the office this morning in San Francisco. And Aaron is the Manager of Global Employee Engagement at NetSuite. Aaron's going to be sharing with us how NetSuite employees are using their skills to benefit the company's nonprofit grantees and how taking the Billion Plus Pledge has helped to shape the skills-based and pro bono service programs at NetSuite. But first, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Robert Rosenthal, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications here at VolunteerMatch. Robert's going to help us get started by framing up the topic of skilled and pro bono service and get us started on the way to answering the question of what's behind the movement to inspire more pro bono in America.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate the introduction, and extra thanks to Jenny and Aaron for joining us today on the call and presenting some of this information for our listeners at VolunteerMatch. Extra thanks too for Aaron for joining us in the office. It's great to have a little person-to-person contact today. I didn't know this, but pro bono is actually short for pro bono publico, for the public good. And I think that's a great place to start in any discussion of the movement around pro bono in America, and especially the increasing level of engagement at companies as they commit to transforming their employee volunteer programs to include more roles for skilled volunteers. We cover pro bono as an element of employee volunteering at VolunteerMatch because it's such an important part of the growth strategy for the 170 or so companies that utilize our services and tools to grow their volunteer programs. As the West's largest volunteer engagement network, we have a special interest in this stuff because we know that for a lot of nonprofits that we serve, pro bono isn't always the easiest thing to engage companies in. It's a very high-touch area of volunteer engagement with both the potential for lots of reward and the potential for lots of risk. I think as we talk today about what's happening with the Billion Plus Change movement, and as we hear from Aaron Dietrich about what's going on at NetSuite, it's an opportunity for us to think not just about how companies can commit and engage in more pro bono, but in particular what the impact that will have in the nonprofit sector. Recently, VolunteerMatch ourselves pledged to join A Billion Plus Change, and we're excited over the next few years to see how we can be of service for corporate America as we look closely at engaging more of our highly skilled professionals in giving back. With that, once again, I wanted to thank our guests for joining today, and let's get started. Jenny, can you take us into A Billion Plus Change, the purpose for the organization, and some of the incredible growth you've seen as you've reached the $2 billion pledge mark?
Hi, Robert. Great, and thank you very much. Let me switch the slides over here a second and see if I can make this work. Of course, it never works when you want it to. Let's see what we can do here. Just a moment to... There we go. I am now the presenter, it says. Good morning, everybody. This is Jenny Lawson. at A Billion Plus Change. And I am so very happy to be with you this morning to talk about the campaign and where we are. You know, the talent of corporate America, your skills and your service is needed now more than ever. The demands on local nonprofits and the community services have never been greater, while, as we all know, the stresses of reduced funding and reduced government support are only increasing.
Hey, Jenny, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It looks like we're not seeing your slides.
Huh.
Press play. There's a little play button. I think that will show everything. There you go.
There we are. Okay. So I won't go backwards in what I'm saying, but you can read Meg's great quote there. Meg Garlinghouse from LinkedIn, one of our pledge company, really articulating the value and importance of skills-based and pro bono volunteering. And again, your talent is needed now more than ever. And that's how A Billion Plus Change sort of found its home and got started. Now, however, it is not letting me, Erin, advance, or there we go, advance the slides. So A Billion Plus Change is a national campaign to encourage corporate America to do more skills-based and pro bono service. And when I say corporate America, I mean businesses from as small as 2 or 3 people all the way up to some of our nation's largest brands. A Billion Plus Change is an initiative of many of the logos that you see there. And in just a short time, more than 300 of America's favorite brands have taken our pledge to create or expand skills-based pro bono programs in their workplaces with a value that is edging ever closer to $2 billion. Someone commented to me the other day, they said, well, you know, we really thought you'd be closer to $2 billion. You've been saying that for a while. What people forget is when you're talking in the billions, those numbers add up just a little bit slower even than they do when you're talking in the millions. So we're getting very close. We're at about $1.975 billion, so getting very, very close to our $2 billion goal. We're seeking 500 companies ready to take our pledge, and to date, 325 have taken it, and so we are looking for that final stretch of companies who will take our pledge, and we can talk about how to do that as we go through the morning. So A Billion Plus Change actually started in 2008. Aaron Hurst at Taproot Foundation and Gene Case at the Case Foundation of AOL founding fame were together at the Summit on Corporate Volunteerism at the White House in 2008 when this idea of encouraging companies to really step up to the high-value service of skills-based and pro bono service was born. And they, with the Corporation for National and Community Service, launched in 2008 and had some early success. They got about $500,000 or $500 million worth of pro bono service. 23 companies signed on. And then a variety of things happened, as things do in organization, and the campaign got backburnered for a while. Dean and Aaron both agreed, along with the partners at Deloitte, that there was much that could be done to really make Billion Plus Change and its important message of skills-based volunteering come alive. And so about 2 years ago now, they brought in a broader partnership with Points of Light Foundation, and together with the Corporation for National Community Service and Deloitte and the Case Foundation, and with the leadership of Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat from Virginia, the campaign sort of was reborn and launched in November of 2011 with a broader partnership even then, bringing in IBM and HP, Capital One Bank, as well as support from Morgan Stanley, State Farm, and others, who provide the financial support and leadership support for the Billion Plus Change campaign. Since that launch in the Senate, with Senator Warner's help in 2011, we have been on the campaign trail, and many of you have had an opportunity to see us or spend time with us or join a webinar or read one of our newsletters as we have been around the country sharing best practices, letting peer-to-peer discussions happen around skills-based volunteering and beating the bandwagon to get companies to take our very simple pledge. It's a quick download of who all of our leadership partners are, and we're very grateful for their service, because one of the most important things that they do is they make it possible for the Billion Plus Change campaign to offer the opportunity for companies to learn and engage for free, which is a super way to increase engagement. Billion Plus Change campaign, in its simplest form, really does simply ask companies to take a pledge to create or expand pro bono service, and then support that with all of the networking, learning, best practices, webinars, and newsletters that we have. And here are just a small snapshot of some of the brands that we have helping us even now. All of these companies have taken the pledge, and most of these companies have also helped us recruit others. As we look to the last 150 some odd pledge companies, we think that you who have not pledged are an important part of our conversation, and we want to talk with you. And also those who have are important activators to find others who haven't. And, you know, I think some of the examples of how companies are engaging in pro bono is very interesting. So more than 30% of the Fortune 100 have taken our pledge. The growing number are actually small businesses and communities who are finding that even 5, 10, or 20 hours of pro bono can make a huge difference in their community. And we all know that there are some interesting sort of micro-volunteering options and skills-based volunteering options that can happen in an online environment. And with just 1 hour of pro bono, for example, the United Health Group volunteer helped an organization in Guatemala receive editing services. She edited a document called 8 Forms of Poverty, which the organization now uses as a model for working with the poor. So that was the value to a nonprofit in an online, through spark.com, pro bono service hour. For example, just 1 day of pro bono and skills-based volunteering allowed Mercy Health Services, a community health clinic in Nashville, to qualify for critical 340B drug programs, saving over $100,000 for the clinic and its patient and enabling greater care at a lower cost. To which the CEO of Mercy characterized the impact of the advisory board's research and think-a-thon is transformative for patients in their care. And that's just 1 hour or 1 day of pro bono service. And with just one business like Deloitte giving pro bono research support, a nonprofit like Share Our Strength and its No Kid Hungry campaign showed that by connecting America's 16 million hungry children to healthy food, the kids can improve their math scores by 17.5% and be 20% more likely to graduate from high school. So pro bono is important in the community for helping communities tackle the really tough challenges. The organizations that participate in a Billion Plus Change represent all fields and all sectors, and their pro bono service is focused on all issues in the community. As I said, to take the pledge, it's free, and your organization never has its details of its pledge confidential. So you can go to the website at abillionpluschange.org and take our simple pledge, and your commitment takes 3 forms. You can either choose to tell us that your organization will, commit that it will complete 100 hours of skills-based volunteering or pro bono volunteering in a year, or that it will complete or commit $150,000 worth of pro bono service in a year, or you can choose what we call the box 4 option, which basically says that pro bono service is new to our organization and we're just figuring it out. We're committed and engaged and we want to learn how, so we're going to join your campaign and come back to you with a more defined pledge when we know a little more. And all of those are perfectly reasonable ways to take a pledge. And the good part is that your pledge is never public unless you make it so. So really we are looking for the aspirational opportunity to help your organization transform its volunteering and philanthropy and community engagement strategies to include skills-based and pro bono. And as I said, the benefits are really an opportunity to join this very dynamic CSR community. I think the thing that I have found most interesting and exciting about being a part of the campaign is this community creating. So the companies and the logos that they represent that you saw on the previous slide really are engaged in the campaign. They provide the peer learning and best practices. In fact, when we hear from Erin Dietrich, NetSuite is a pledge company, and Erin is actually one of the few in our group who's pledged twice. In her previous employer was a pledge company, and now she is NetSuite is a pledge company as well. And so Erin's been a great champion for this campaign, and one of an increasing number of voices who support us with their time and energy, as well as the pro bono service that their organizations provide. And again, it's very straightforward to take the pledge. And we are happy to work with you through the process. So don't feel you need to go it alone. You'll see some phone numbers all through our website and at the end of this presentation, and we're happy to have you use those and contact us. I spend a good part of my day every day talking to companies about how to join the Billion Plus Change and how to think about their skills-based and pro bono. And I should probably stop and just sort of articulate the skills-based and pro bono spectrum a little bit. I use the words pretty interchangeably, but I know for some they carry a lot more meaning. Skills-based and pro bono, the way we look at it at Billion Plus Change, is sort of the transition from more traditional volunteering, using the skills of an employee, either their workplace skills or specialty skills, to serve a nonprofit. One of my favorite to talk about is Major League Baseball. So if Major League Baseball is putting on baseball clinics that engage low-income community kids in learning about baseball and bringing some of their athletes out to run those clinics and be a part of that, baseball is using its skills to deliver service to the community in a very important way. If the managers at Major League Baseball take that one step further and engage with the local neighborhood sports community in a low-income community to help them develop a strategy to grow baseball summer youth programs, they're using a higher level, closer to pro bono volunteering service. And then even further on that continuum is the role of world service. So all of those activities from one end of the spectrum to the other are an exciting part of companies' commitments to Billion Plus Change. What are some of the value propositions of the campaign? I think the most important thing absolutely is the value back to communities. With more than 500 pro bono programs captured, there'll be billions of dollars of services and pledges back into the community. And that is huge. In fact, the $2 billion worth of service over time is the equivalent of more than 6,400 full-time employees tackling tough problems for nonprofits around the country. And then to companies, I think the values, as we've said, is the learning and program improvement. And I think Erin will probably talk a little bit about some of the values that her companies have found in joining a Billion Plus Change. So with that, I'm going to transition just a little bit to talk about some other aspects of the campaign and some of the other things that we're doing. So as part of our outreach to our partners and working with communities, it's really important for us to make sure that the nonprofits that our companies are working with are prepared and ready to take advantage of the pro bono services that are offered. So the next slide transitions to talk about a new project with some of the Billion Plus Change Pledge Company partners called the Readiness Roadmap. And it is the Readiness Roadmap, which can be found at readinessroadmap.org, and we'll get to that, that email address in a while, sets up based on the premise that sometimes skills-based and pro bono volunteering doesn't go right, that nonprofits aren't able, for a variety of reasons, to maximize the relationship, and companies are frustrated by that, as are the nonprofits. And what are some of the reasons that make skills-based volunteering, BV. Not helpful. Perhaps delivery was disappointing. Expectations weren't managed, and one side was expecting something that didn't happen. Perhaps the volunteers weren't ready, didn't know enough about the agency to be good matches into the system. Or perhaps both had different expectations for how much time it would take. There are several factors, and to help the partners in the Readiness Roadmap, Cone Research, or excuse me, LBG Research, did some background asking nonprofits about their engagement and relationship with skills-based volunteering and what would work for them and what hadn't. And while the majority had found the process to be helpful, about 25% thought that it took too long. And another 25% felt that the volunteer didn't have the right skills or that the scope of work was underestimated. And so a group of really engaging partners that include the Taproot Foundation, Common Impact, Points of Light, and through Points of Light, some of the folks on the Billion Plus Change staff, all funded by Capital One, developed a consortium to develop the Readiness Roadmap, which is a clearinghouse of online information to help nonprofits get ready to receive pro bono service. So we would encourage you all to visit readinessroadmap.org. It's free. It's a one-stop shop with information and background and a step-by-step tool to walk you, a nonprofit, through the very early stage of understanding skills-based and pro bono volunteering and beginning the preparation for that process as they reach out to companies. And here are some of the websites, again, the readinessroadmap.org and the websites for the various partners who are engaged in the campaign. And again, you'll see at the bottom, as you visit readinessroadmap.org, please feel free to give us feedback. This is an early stage development project, and we're happy for your input and thoughts on the subject. So coming back around to the Billion Plus Change, I want to, make sure that everyone understands what you can do. If you're already a pledge company, recruit others through our Just One More challenge. Most of you have gotten an email in the last week about helping us find just one more company in your network to reach our 500 company goal. If you are not yet a pledged company, I strongly encourage you to go to abillionpluschange.org and take the pledge. It's free, it's simple, it's straightforward. You go to the top of the page, push the little red Start a Pledge button, and the whole process takes under 3 minutes. You can text your pledge. If you want to that is my personal cell phone number, and you can send me your pledge, and we're happy to get back in contact with you for any details that we might need. But it can be as simple as texting me your pledge. You can join the Billion Plus Change group on Twitter. We have a company page on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can follow us and look for our videos on YouTube. We actually have an amazing library of more than 40 videos of pro bono service examples from our pledge companies around the country, and encourage you to have a look there. So with that, I will end my talking and look forward to your questions later on in the program. And I believe with that, Laura, is to send this back to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Just going to get the presentation back over here so Erin can take it away. All right.
Great. Thank you all so much. I'm really excited to be able to be here in person today and also to be joining Jenny and the VolunteerMatch team to talk about the importance of skills-based volunteering and pro bono at an organization, and also talk a little bit about the tactical reasons that we at NetSuite and also at my previous organization, Discovery Communications, had joined the Billion Plus Change campaign. So to start out, I thought I'd just give everybody a quick overview of who NetSuite is and what we do. NetSuite is the global leader of cloud computing business management software systems, so that's ERP, CRM, e-commerce. We really try to help organizations efficiently run their back office in a way that helps them focus on the core business every day. And NetSuite.org is the corporate citizenship arm of the company. So for us, our critical mission is to use the employees and the technology at NetSuite every day and figure out how we can empower charities and social enterprises to transform the way that they're running their businesses. We took that powerful cloud-based tool that we saw a lot of companies using and donate it to charities and social enterprises, and then we also follow up with skills-based volunteering from our employees. So on the next slide, I wanted to talk a bit about our pro bono program at NetSuite, which is called Sweet Volunteer. And those who have met me or heard me speak before know that I'm a huge fan of branding your employee volunteers and programs. I think branding really helps employees understand that this is a program they can be a part of. It makes them feel like they're kind of part of a club once they get into doing pro bono, and it helps create a really nice campaign feel and atmosphere at your company. So we launched Sweet Volunteers formally at the beginning of this year, but NetSuite has had a long history of pro bono service. For about 7 years, we've been doing ad hoc pro bono. So any of those nonprofits and social enterprises who are using our donation would occasionally come to us with a problem or a challenge they were having, and we would go out and find a volunteer to work with them. This was fantastic and really helped our employees understand the value of pro bono from the beginning, but it was very challenging for us to create a model that was sustainable doing that kind of ad hoc service. So in June of 2012, we decided to take the Billing Plus Change pledge. We wanted to, as a company, kind of publicly commit to pro bono. We also found that taking the pledge was a wonderful way for us to bring some awareness to our pro bono campaign internally at the company. It helped us connect with more of our executives. We put out a press release so that our customers and our constituents knew that we were publicly kind of putting a stake in the ground for pro bono. And it was really the launching pad for us to form Sweet Volunteers and ensure that we were creating a successful pro bono strategy at the company that could take us forward. So when we created Sweet Volunteers, we realized that we needed to move away from this ad hoc program and instead create a strategic program that could scale as our company grew. We're undergoing a really exciting time of extreme growth and have been hiring a couple hundred people, I think, every month for the last year. And so we knew that with that growth, we wanted all of our employees to understand how to be a part of pro bono from the beginning. And we needed to have a program that really would work to be able to keep growing as our employee population grew. We also knew that we wanted to create a program that engaged employees to work together across different departments and across different geographic locations. We have about 15 offices around the world, and a lot of our employees had not really had the opportunity to work with their coworkers if they were outside of their location. So we saw Sweet Volunteers as filling in a gap that was really needed at the company. We also, obviously, at the very top of our list, wanted to make sure that our pro bono was helping those nonprofits and social enterprises who were using NetSuite achieve success. I really believe in each company who takes the pledge and who does pro bono, thinking about what they have the highest level of expertise around. And for us, we know that our employees, all 2,000 of them around the world, are the top experts at using NetSuite. Our product obviously is created in-house, and so our employees not only have developed the product, but they help all of the companies around the world who are using NetSuite every day run their business. And so since we have these critical NetSuite skills, we figured we would want to leverage those skills on behalf of the charities and social enterprises. I'll talk a little bit on the next slide about how the program actually runs, because I know for me that's something I'm always very interested in when I talk to other corporate engagement folks, is how do you actually do this? What does the process look like? So we'll dig into that on the next slide. But I wanted to, while we were here, just talk quickly about the benefits that I see and have seen both at Discovery and at NetSuite for our employees. Obviously, there's a tremendous surge in engagement when you get employees involved in pro bono. They're not only helping create social impact for the nonprofit world, but they're feeling much more engaged with their day-to-day work environment. They're realizing that their company's empowering them to use their professional skills to make a lasting change in the nonprofit space, and I think that that's an incredibly powerful emotion for many employees, and it's something that creates a lot of pride of work and pride of workplace. And those are critical things for me every day when I look at how our programs are doing. I want to really make sure that I'm creating a program that helps my employees feel very proud of themselves, their own skills, and feel very proud of the company who has allowed them to use these skills to kind of create good out there in the world. Pro Bono is also a terrific professional development opportunity, and so one thing that we really try to do at NetSuite is as we pair up our employees to work in teams with our nonprofits, we look for a junior employee and a senior employee who would not have had the opportunity to work together in the past and pair them up, and we see a lot of great professional development from this, especially in project management. You know, some of our employees have not had a lot of opportunity to do project management and be a leader of a project before, and putting them into that project management role on a pro bono project is a fantastic way to help develop those skills, something they can then go back and talk about in their reviews with their manager and at the end of the year as something that they were able to focus on and grow throughout the year. Pro bono is also a great retention tool for folks who are working hand in hand with their HR teams. A lot of employees have, anecdotally said that one of the reasons they stay at companies is because of these extra programs that they get to be a part of that usually fall in the CSR space, things like pro bono or non-skilled volunteering. And then finally, on this slide, there's a few highlights of the first quarter Sweet Volunteers program, which is finishing up this week. We had 6 different projects that we offered, and we had 44 of our grantees. So as I mentioned, these are the charities and social enterprises who use our software, request projects. Of those, we selected 23 projects, and we paired 50 employees on those 23 projects. And those 50 employees spanned 12 of our 14 offices. So on the next slide, we will talk a little bit about how Sweet Volunteers actually works. So each quarter, we open Sweet Volunteers registration. We send out an email to all of our grantees, the charities and social enterprises using our software donation, and they're offered a menu of different projects that they can apply for that quarter. At the same time, we open our registration on our VolunteerMatch portal, which you can see a picture of on this slide, to our employees, and our employees go in and they sign up for which projects they feel confident that they could fulfill. So both our grantees and our employees are looking at the same menu and are selecting the things on the grantee side that they want and on the employee side that they can deliver. Our netsuite.org team then takes on the project matching, and so for us that's looking at all of those grantee requests, making sure that those charities and social enterprises can adequately use the work that they're requesting, make sure that their kind of reasons that they've asked for the work seem to work with what we were expecting, and that we think it'll be a successful project. We match up our employees based on their skills, and as I mentioned before, a junior and a senior employee together, or people from different departments or people from different locations, and we set everybody up in these teams and announce all of our teams at the same time. We then do a big kickoff meeting for all of our volunteers and a separate one for all of our grantees who are receiving work, and during those meetings, we really try to set out exactly how the project will go. As I think Jenny mentioned before, some of the kind of failures in pro bono often come from people not really having the right expectations as they go into the work. And so something that we've been very focused on from the beginning is making sure that we are setting expectations, that we are very clear about how the work will go, when it will be delivered. That is a partnership between the nonprofit and the employee. This isn't that the employee is going to go away, create something, and then deliver it back. It is a working relationship between the two. And we detail the timeline of how the work will flow. Then we really hand it off to the volunteers. We want them to become the project managers. So we send out an email between the volunteers and the nonprofits, connecting them, and then the work is in the volunteers' hands. Our team checks in with the volunteers, every week, every other week, to make sure that if there's any additional resources we can give them, any kind of course correction that they need, that we're there to support that. But we're really looking at this point for the volunteers to be the leaders. And this is the time when I, as a professional in this space, just love to sit back and watch it all happen, because this is where you really see those volunteers just have that enormous pride of what they know, and they really realize with each step that, wow, they have so much to offer, and there's so many new things that they can add. And sometimes as the person managing the project, you have to kind of rein them in and tell them exactly what your expectations are. But it's very exciting to see the project work go on. At the end of the quarter, we look for the projects to be closed out and completed, and then we survey all of our participants. Surveying is a huge piece of a successful program, and something that, since we're at the end of the quarter, my surveys are about to go out this week, and I'm really excited to see the feedback, because I'm a firm believer that no program should ever be set in stone, and every quarter we look to adapt how the project is running and make sure that we're making it as successful as possible for both the nonprofits and for our employees. So that is really the main gist of how Sweet Volunteers runs. I'm going to turn it back to Robert, who I think has some questions.
Yeah, and thanks, Erin. I appreciate that. In a few minutes, I'll ask Jenny some questions about Billion Plus. But before we get there, I wanted to take a moment with Erin on the line and ask a few follow-up questions about the program over at NetSuite. I was thinking as she spoke about the research that the Corporation for National Community Service put out in 2008 that said that around $15 billion is given annually by corporations in America, specifically through pro bono engagement, which is a pretty huge number, hard to really get your brain around, and I'm sure that number has gone up a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. Drilling deep into the details of that, we have many, many individual stories around America of nonprofits getting lots of skilled volunteering support from companies. I can speak from experience with VolunteerMatch that once upon a time we were a grantee invited to take part in a program at Discovery Communications where Erin came from before NetSuite, and we were able to take advantage of the skills around graphic design, creative services, and copywriting from the team at Discovery Communications. And that's the partnership that exists today, adding lots of value to the work that we do in communications at VolunteerMatch. These are the kinds of stories that are taking place all across America today. And sometimes when we think about these large numbers, we talk about 500 companies, or we talk about $2 billion in pro bono service pledged through Billion Plus, we sometimes forget about these very real success stories that are happening on the ground. So I wanted to ask Erin real quick, you mentioned there's six project options and 44 grantee requests. Can you give me a sense of like, what are the project options that you offer employees, and what are the kinds of nonprofits that you typically are looking for in your grantees?
Sure. So each quarter we offer a different set of options, and we've actually created those options by putting together an advisory council of folks from all of our, high-level folks from all of our departments across the company, and figured out what are the core skills of our employees and what are those projects then that work with those skills. So for first quarter, we really targeted our marketing team, our finance team, and our education services team. We offered about 2 projects that kind of dovetailed with each department's work. For marketing, that looked like offering kind of an outbound marketing strategy and an e-blast. Since NetSuite is a CRM tool, a lot of our grantees are using NetSuite to do email to their constituents, but they haven't really thought about the strategic way to do that, and they haven't set out an outbound marketing calendar and figured out what the different types of blasts they would do are. So our marketing team will sit down with them during the project, talk through the strategy of, okay, what is, who are you trying to reach? What is your goal? What is the call to action with that population? Then they'll work together on the content creation for the marketing e-blast. They'll put it into the template, and they'll actually together, hand in hand, send that e-blast during the course of their Sweet Volunteers project. One of the things that I should have mentioned that I didn't, so thank you for asking this question, is that each of our projects are built to take between 4 and 20 hours per volunteer. So this is not a full-time job that our volunteers are doing during the quarter. It's something that they're doing during release time, so their day-to-day work, they work this into it, and it's 4 to 20 hours over the course of the quarter. And we really work with the grantee to give them the tools to do one project together, and then hope that they'll be able to do many more projects on their own once we do the handoff at the end of the quarter. So they might have done one e-blast together during Sweet Volunteers, but afterwards they have the tools to send out e-blasts for the rest of the year.
Great, and I wanted to ask, kind of bringing it back to the theme of the webinar today, where do you see the role of a pledge fitting in with some of your early goals? You're setting up a program, you're new to the company, you're getting buy-in, still earning buy-in potentially. I know there's some other great folks over there, but you've got something to prove here about pro bono, and I wanted to get a sense of like where you see a pledge fitting in with some of your overall goals around getting resources within the company.
Absolutely. So I've spoken to a couple people who are on the fence about taking the pledge, And what I always say to them is that, the pledge is an amazing kind of launch pad for you. The pledge does not mean that you have it all figured out, that you have this very successful 10-year-old pro bono program and you're ready to go take the pledge. The pledge is an empowering thing for a CSR professional to be able to say, you know what, my company is taking the pledge. This gives me the opportunity to engage my executives again on something that we've probably already talked about, and for us to now set a timeline of how we're going to launch. Maybe it's just a beta launch of a first project, but for me, having NetSuite take the pledge was a really important thing that I wanted to make sure that we did once I joined the company, because I knew that they'd had this long history of pro bono, and I knew that we wanted to create a new strategy for pro bono. And I felt like the pledge was this great moment where we could say, okay, ad hoc project is kind of closing out now. We're taking the pledge, and we're going to launch the strategic program right afterwards. And it allowed us to get people internally talking about what we were doing. It allowed us to externally, go out on the record that this is something we were committed to. And I think it was a really great opportunity for us. And I would totally encourage any other company who's thinking about it and kind of needs that little, kick to move forward to take the pledge.
Great. And then one last question from the audience today for Erin. How large is your team, and what are the specific roles involved in managing these skilled volunteer projects?
Sure. So our team is a little non-traditional. We have about 7 folks on our CSR team, but there are only 2 of us who are fully employee engagement centered. The rest of our team, for the most part, is working with our grantees. We have, sales folks and account managers, because all of our grantees are using NetSuite through our donation program. So we have a whole group of folks who are doing that. The 2 of us who are managing the day-to-day of Suite volunteers are really, doing we did a bunch of effort to get ourselves to launch and to run the first quarter's program. But one of the reasons that we created this program was in hopes that it became a bit self-sustaining, and that, other than putting out the launch and matching our employees together, that our employees knew every quarter this was coming, that, we hear from our employees and our grantees what services they're looking for, so we can keep refreshing that menu of options every quarter, and that this is something that can, continue at NetSuite and become a signature program without an enormous amount of heavy lifting every quarter from our team.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to turn some of my questioning over to Jenny to talk a little bit more about billing and change. But actually, before I do that, I just wanted to point out to any nonprofit listeners that we have on the call, VolunteerMatch has published a 5-part series on our blog for nonprofits, engagingvolunteers.org, a 5-part series of articles on how nonprofits can prepare to be a great partner in pro bono engagement when they work with companies. We'll try and share that link as part of this presentation when we put it out in archive form, either at YouTube or in SlideShare. But if anybody has a pen and is a nonprofit, that URL is bit.ly, that's bit.ly/10L 3V as in Victor KQ. Again, that was bit.ly/10L 3V KQ, and you can get to that blog series, which we've put together to help nonprofits prepare to be a great partner. So turning it over to Jenny, can you give me a sense of, where's Billion Plus headed? I know you've set out, even the name Billion Plus really kind of, it sounds a lot like you guys have set out to achieve a big goal, and you've gotten there. I want to get a sense of where the organization might be in 3 to 5 years as more companies begin to sign up for the pledge, and as we start to see pro bono as a percentage of volunteer engagement grow within corporate America. Where will the organization evolve to?
Thank you. And in fact, these are the questions that our leadership team is tackling even as we speak. But, I think there are certainly a couple of clear paths. I think primarily it is responding to the question of the sort of so now what, and how we make 500 companies and $2 billion worth of pledges actually matter. So what are the things that we can do with the power of a collective voice to really make pro bono lasting and sustainable within companies and within communities? I think looking for relationships and partnerships that bring the Billion Plus Change message more alive in local communities, and I imagine that'll start with bigger cities. So where are those networks, either with the chamber, other nonprofits, other for-profits, that sustain the voice and value of pro bono in a given community? I think looking for those collaborations and relationships in cities around the country is certainly something that we anticipate will continue. I think something else that's emerging is very interesting is how do we, given the number of large multinational companies that participate in Billion Plus Change, how do we make their skill matter at a global level? So how do we use the fact that the same 20 companies or 10 companies that are part of Billion Plus Change in the U.S. are also in Rio, and they're also in Singapore? How do we help them, provide them with the support and tools and engagement to build the Billion Plus Change ethic in some of the global communities and support that effort as well? I also think that there's an amazing opportunity to crunch some numbers, to provide some insight and support into questions around measuring impact and benchmarking, and providing that sort of rigor into the pro bono marketplace in much the same way that the Pro Bono Institute developed those tools and resources for the legal community in its 40, 50-year history with pro bono service. Great. So I think, just looking down, those are sort of the clear directions that seem to be emerging, with an overlay of what we've come to be known for and do best is this sort of peer engagement, peer advocacy, convening, best practice learning and sharing. And so we totally expect that those things will continue as well. It was great listening to Erin, and in fact, you see what makes my job so great is, in fact, I have 325 companies who can easily talk about the value of our process and our organization. So I usually don't have to talk very much.
Well, I have a few more questions for you, Jenny, but before I launch into those, a question from the audience came in that, is there a readiness roadmap for the for-profit, similar to the one at readinessroadmap.org, which is for nonprofit?
I love it when I have an answer. The answer is in June. This same consortium has actually now turned its energy to developing exactly that tool with a beta anticipated, and you know how these things go, but anticipated to be launched at the National Conference on Volunteering Service in Washington, D.C. in June.
Terrific. And there's one more question that just came in from the audience, which I will take. A question came in, what would be some examples of pro bono projects that an electric utility company might engage in? And I think it's worth pointing out that within any company there are lots of different skills involved, whether it's accounting, whether it's creative services, whether it's legal, whether it's project management. In the case of a utilities company, it might be something along the lines of facilities management or the installation, obviously, of different kinds of utility systems. So companies are learning how to put their skill sets, whatever those skill sets are, to good use in whatever fashion can be done. And I would encourage the questioner who asked that one to consider what are the different professional roles involved in making a utility company successful. Those are the same types of functions that can be utilized by a nonprofit to do the same. Jenny, one thing that came up when we were looking at your presentation was you had a phrase around creating a marketplace for skilled volunteering commitment, recognition, and learning. And I was really intrigued by that phrase, marketplace. I think it's one thing to say that we're creating a resource where people can learn more, but the idea that there's a marketplace for commitment, recognition, and learning kind of had my curiosity piqued. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means?
Sure, happy to. And again, defining what we mean by a marketplace is very much on the minds of the leadership at Billion Plus Change right now. And I think it is, adding energy into the space in which companies, nonprofits can articulate their needs for pro bono service, and companies can present and understand the services that they can offer, and supporting an environment where those two can come together. And I think, VolunteerMatch and its pledge, and that along with other technology companies, really have a lot to offer into the campaign in this space. And understanding as they do that there's a matching process, and there's also this sort of project management process that moves forward, and helping to provide some learning, some best practice sharing, and some collaboration at a scale that really allows all of the service providers to maximize their interest and opportunities in pro bono.
Great, and that's actually connected to a question that just came in to us from Twitter. What are the roles of intermediaries that are part of the pledge, for example, Taproot Foundation, in delivering pro bono services as part of the pledge program? Can you talk a little bit about these other intermediaries? You mentioned tools providers. What about some of the other roles that intermediaries might be playing?
That's exactly right, and thanks so much for the question. Partners like Taproot and Common Impact and Catch a Fire and Sparked and others really help companies realize the value and opportunity of their pledges. So they are part of the service delivery mechanism. Points of Light is in there as well. That the campaign itself does not do consulting services. We do not directly match your nonprofit to opportunities, but help you learn how to do that. And much of the learning and tools and the actual support to connect your nonprofit and your company to pledge opportunities is provided by those intermediaries. Like Taproot, who has some of the very best learning, research, models, and history in developing pro bono. Common Impact, excellent. All of these companies, excellent, in providing consulting services and training and program development for both companies and nonprofits who are interested in this type of service, as well as being great thought leaders and resources to the campaign. Somebody asked Erin how big her staff was. We run the campaign on a staff of 3, and so leveraging the power and resources of all of our peers is actually the hallmark of how we get our job done.
Great. And a question just came in from the audience. Do the majority of companies who are involved in taking the pledge and who are involved in pro bono allow employees to do this volunteer work during paid company time, or do they ask employees to do this off company time? And I think I would point out that corporate pro bono volunteer engagement is utilizing the company's resources for public benefit, and so we look to companies to provide those professional resources on paid time, rather than asking or compelling employees to do this on their own time. I think that would be a useful definition, or at least a sub-definition of what pro bono volunteer engagement means. So Jenny, one last question. We're almost wrapping up, but I wanted to get this one in there. You mentioned that only about 30% of Fortune 100 have taken the pledge, and I wanted to get a sense from you, are there any trends or commonalities among companies that simply are not pledging? What are you seeing in terms of the common bonds behind companies that aren't quite ready to get on board?
I think sometimes there are internal barriers. In many cases, it's related to marketplace and product and timing and organizational changes and when and where conversations can happen. And more than anything, I think the other part of the failing is the capacity of my organization to sit with each of those companies and have meaningful conversations about the campaign and taking a pledge. So the more that our folks out there can help connect us to some of those companies who aren't there, the bigger that number gets. And I do think, and we've heard this from the intermediaries and from others, one of the big changes with the campaign is that it's no longer that you have to describe what skills-based and pro bono is. It's now become a question of, well, how do we do this and when do we do this? Not so much a question of why. And I think that has been one of the big movements forward that Billion Plus Change has brought to the market.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate you taking the time to answer all of my questions and the questions from the audience. And before I turn it over to Lauren to wrap things up, I just wanted to put my own challenge out to the audience. At VolunteerMatch, we have been working over the last few years with lots of professional services firms in different pro bono capacities, be it legal services, be it creative services, in some cases Salesforce CRM services. These engagements have the ability to transform our work, create more structure, strengthen our ability to make a difference, and ultimately help us reach our mission. And I encourage the nonprofits that are listening to think about beginning to engage companies in a pro bono capacity. And I certainly thank all the companies that are on the call for their commitment to pro bono, and also encourage them, if they have not yet explored what this can do for their programs, to consider adding it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thank you so much. So, just wanted to say thank you again to Jenny and to Aaron for joining us today and for sharing their thoughts and expertise with us, on the topic of skills-based and pro bono volunteerism, and how important it is really to go kind of that one step beyond and really help to impact the core work of the work that nonprofits are doing. So, and thank you so much to Robert for helping to drive the conversation and to keep the conversation going. So just a few other resources that we offer to keep you up to date and informed on what's going on in the world of employee engagement. You can always visit our blog, volunteering@csr.org, and follow us on Twitter at VM_solutions. And of course, sign up for our monthly Good Companies newsletter to stay up to date on trends and best practices in employee engagement. Next month, we hope to see you again on the Best Practice Network webinar on April 30th, where we're going to be talking about cause marketing and why it's a good investment for your company for 2013. And we're going to be joined by Joe Waters, who is a cause marketing expert and the co-author of the book Cause Marketing for Dummies, as well as the founder of selfishgiving.com, which is a great blog all about cause marketing. So we hope to see you then. And thank you again to everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.